Okay, so on the board, you can see that it says Trickier Expansions, but on the actual whiteboard itself, I don't think I gave you Tricky Expansions. The first one was m plus 3 times m minus 1. And if you did it, you might have done it by chicken beaking, you might have done it by box method, or by inspection, which is no, it's another class. Inspection simply means you can just look at it and know it from there. So it's equal to m squared minus m plus 3m minus 3. You can just do it by looking at it. That's what by inspection means. For simple ones, that's okay. And so that's equal to m squared minus, plus 2m minus 3. Done. Anyone got any questions on that? Number 2, do I have enough room to do number 2 on that box? Yeah, why do I have enough room? Yeah, by inspection again, it fits the pattern, right? M plus 2, m minus 2, is it m minus 2? Yeah, m minus 2 all squared. Only needs one line. I see that it is a perfect square, and so my solution is just square the first one, then minus twice the product in the middle, so 2 times 2 times n, which is 4m, and then plus the square of the second term, which is 4. So it's m squared minus 4m plus 4. Done. Now, again, I cannot emphasize enough that if you're still doing box method or you're still doing chicken beak method, when it is a difference of 2 squares or a perfect square, then you need to practice more until you can just do it. Okay, contrary to the usual advice given by your maths teachers. When it's a particular pattern, I want to see you applying it directly. And when you get your quiz results back, you'll see that I've written that. I've put a big cross through the box method when you've sort of shown you're working out. But I don't want to see it. Remember, for perfect squares and for dots, I don't want to see it. I want to see that you can actually apply it without needing the box method or the chicken beak method or whatever. It's really important. Even if it says show all working out, what you should do is you should just put PS or dots next to the problem and then do the answer. Your working out is, I recognize that it's PS or dots. Now, the reason why I put these two together is because one of the quiz questions was this one. M plus 3 multiplied by m minus 1 minus m minus 2 all squared. Do you remember that from the quiz, those who did the quiz? So people fell apart. Oh my gosh, there's an addition and subtraction of stuff. It must therefore go into a different kind of set of things we have to do. You don't. If I said to you 3 times 4 minus 7 squared, I bet you could do that problem without it being weird. I bet you could just go, well, that's 12 minus 49, and that's equal to negative 37. I bet you could do that without too much thought. Well, why would you do it? Well, because you know BODMath says I have to multiply things together before I can add and subtract. You know BODMath says that I should square things before I multiply. You know that I have to do the two things I've circled before I subtract them away from each other. You know all of that. If it works in regular old number maths, it works in algebra and vice versa. Vice versa. I'll pick a really trivial example of vice versa. Does everyone know what 16 minus 9 is? It's 7, isn't it? It's 7. But was it Samson? Did you say dots? Yeah, well done, because I am going to go down that line. 16 minus 9 is also 4 squared minus 3 squared, which is 4 minus 3 multiplied by 4 plus 3, which is equal to 1 times 7, which is equal to 7. That's a long way around, isn't it? But I wanted to point out that the serious underline for that is that dots works for just plain old numbers. And that's because mathematics is consistent. And algebra, remember, is not about apples and bananas and xylophones and yaks, but it's about values that are represented by letters to represent the unknown number. So A's and B, or A, B, X, Y. They are all variable letters. They're all letters which represent unknown numbers, but they're still numbers. So that's just, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I just wanted to say that exact thing, that it's, that try not to lose your head when you see an unfamiliar mathematical thing. Try and determine what does it mean in the context of, you know, your basic mathematic principles like BODMAS or BIDMAS or BEDMAS, however you learnt it, or BEMDAS or however you learned it. Remember those kinds of basic facts, because people tended to lose the plot a bit. The other thing that people tended to lose the plot about was things like, oh my gosh, this problem is more complicated, so therefore the perfect square rule, I think I'll just call that m squared minus 4. That can't be right, because I know that m squared minus 4 is m minus 2, m plus 2, whereas this is m minus 2 times m minus 2. But again, when the pressure's there, when the pressure is there, mistakes are made unless it's automatic, right? Unless it's automatic. Like, imagine how much pressure you have to be to forget to breathe. It is possible. It is possible to not forget how to breathe, but to stop breathing because you're under high stress. But, you know, you tend to remember how to breathe because it's an automatic reaction, right? So your mathematics needs to be so automatic. The application of these rules so that when you're under a test situation, you're not making silly mistakes like that. Raf?
When I did it, I basically split the equation into two. It's like I just solved.
Like I did on the left? Solved each part separately? Yeah. That's what you should do. Now, I wouldn't do it like separate problems like I've done on the left there. But what I would do is I would say, okay, well, BODMAS says I have to work out this bit because these two things are multiplied together. Just give me 1 second, Charlie, then I'll take your question or comment. So BODMAS says I have to work out what this is, and BODMAS says I have to work out what this is because it's a square. So before I do anything else, I need to treat this like a mini problem and treat this like a mini problem. Charlie? I reckon you could just ask me again in 5 minutes, yeah? So you would do this as you go along, but more or less, you could say that's equal to m squared plus 2m minus 3, right? So I've replaced the product, the m plus 3 times m minus 1 with this expansion. Now, here's the next tricky bit then. Some people got that far, but then they went minus m squared plus 4m, say that again, m squared minus 4m plus 4. Now, that's a problem. Although the expansion is right, m squared minus 4m plus 4, that minus here makes all the difference. Whenever you've got a minus, you should keep stuff in brackets when you expand. Okay, really important, because then the next line is m squared plus 2m minus 3 minus m squared plus 4m minus 4, right? So basically everything inside the brackets gets their sign flipped. So m squared becomes minus m squared, minus 4m becomes plus 4m, plus 4 becomes minus 4, gets flipped. And then the other thing that I thought was a little bit strange was that people, even if they got that far, very few people got that far, but even with mistakes, some people just left it there and said, I'm done. But we know in mathematics we need to do a tidy up, don't we? And tidy up in mathematics is collecting like terms. So I like to put ticks on things if I haven't lined them up neatly. M squared minus m squared is 0, gone. 2m plus 4m is 6m, minus 3 minus 4 is minus 7. Is everything ticked? Yep. So there's my final line, 6m minus 7 is the full expansion. So it's tricky because it's asking you to remember BODMAS, monic expansion, and perfect squares. Each individual bit, I think you'd agree really, each individual bit's not that tricky, but the trickiness comes from all of it together. Okay, so just for the purpose of the video, I'll explain what's happening now. I want to start lessons off with one of these kinds of trickier problems or a problem from the quiz each lesson, just to give you a bit of context. In a moment, I'm going to hand back your quiz so you can have a look at it. You'll notice the staple has been shaved off, and that's because I've taken a scan of all the work so that I can put it onto Sector to release to, so you've got a copy there. For, even if you lose this copy, you'll have a copy. So once I've handed back the quiz, you have a puzzle sheet that you can, that I'd like you to continue. The puzzle sheet has everything to do with factorization, the non-monics, but the whole mixture of them really. So I want you to keep practicing that factorization technique. So from this, I'll stop the recording in a second, but for this lesson then, it's going to be getting your quiz back and having a look at it, going through, practicing some of the problems from the puzzle sheet. About halfway through or so, or maybe about 15 minutes time, I won't put this into the video recording because it'll be tricky to capture, but I'll go through some of the quiz questions. But I'll say this for the video recording. Pretty much most of you had big holes all over your quiz. Okay, some things you did okay, some things that are you're not there yet. Please remember that I said to you, you don't have to study for this quiz. It is not a reflection on what you can do after study. It's really a reflection of what you've got automatic and what you don't yet. So when you look at your quiz, look at it in terms of, oh, I need to practice more of these problems. I better focus on these in my study, but I know how to do this bit, so I won't do so much of that in my revision. Does that make sense? You'll notice that although they have marks next to each question, I have not added up any marks for you at all. It's not the point. There's no point saying that you got 12 out of 40 or 30 out of 40. That's not the point. The point is to read through and make a note. And what I'll do when I've released it in Sector is I'll enable reflections. And in your reflections, I want you to say one thing that you did well, one thing that you need to work on, and the third step's really important. How are you going to work on it? And that might be, I need to ask Richard for some assistance outside of class so that I can get some one-on-one tutorial. Or it could be I need to look at some videos online, or it could be I just need to practice a lot. Whatever it is, focus, put some real practical steps on how you can improve the bits where you're not there yet. Any questions about that? I know you probably like, just give me my quiz, damn it, and I will give it back to you, I promise. I just wanted to check, because I know that you're going to see a lot of green pen everywhere, and people are going to freak out. Don't freak out. Diagnose. Say, okay, this is what I need to work on. Remember, I did not study for this. Now, so I'm just going to stop the video, and then you can get onto your puzzle sheet, and then I'll start handing back the quizzes in about 2 or 3 minutes.